What's going on, guys? Good morning. Welcome back to United View. Hope everyone is doing very well, having a good Thursday. And Michael Carrick could be about to get the Manchester United job permanently. And I'll be honest, and this isn't even a revelation here, this one is going to split the fan base massively because the latest reports are saying that United's football leadership are ready to recommend Carrick to Sir Jim Ratcliffe as the man to lead Manchester United into next season. Omar Barada, the CEO, and Jason Wilcox, the director of football, are believed to see Carrick as the right choice. Formal contract talks are expected to follow if Ratcliffe gives the green light. And there's even talk that Steve Holland could stay with him as part of the coaching setup. It looks like everyone's going to stay where they are. But here's where it gets interesting. On one side, you can say Carrick has absolutely earned it. United were in a mess. He came in, he steadied the ship, improved results, got the players believing again, and helped put the club back on track for Champions League football, achieving his objective. The dressing room appears to be behind him. The staff appear to back him. And sometimes the best appointment is the one already proving it inside the building. Like Wayne Rooney said, the one that's right in front of you. But on the other side, this is Manchester United. Is a good interim run enough? Have we been here before with Ole Gunnar Solskjaer? Are United about to make an emotional decision because Carrick knows the club, understands the culture, and has got momentum at the right time? Or is that comparison unfair because Carrick is his own man with a different staff, a different structure above him, and a proper football department now making the call? And what about the other names? Unai Emery, reportedly, according to The Athletic, was looked at. Andoni Iraola from Bournemouth, according to The Athletic, was looked at. Other candidates were considered. So if United choose Carrick over all of them, it is a massive statement. So what I want to know from you guys is Carrick the right man for the permanent Manchester United job? Is this smart planning or a huge risk? And are fans being too harsh because of what happened with Ole? Or are the warning signs impossible to ignore? For me, I think, he's earned the right to at least get a summer transfer window and a pre-season to see if he can rebuild on what has been a remarkable 5 or 6 months with more players, better midfield, etc. I would want to see an improvement in performances, but this is also a results-based business, which is the key for United. For all the talk about underlying metrics, the key is still the top ones for me. Points, league position, all the metrics that also can't be quantified, like managing the players, the personality, the media, the understanding of Manchester United. At Manchester United, in my opinion, that's where managers like Emery, Van Gaal, Ten Hag, Jose all fell ultimately because, one, they didn't get results, but most importantly, it also looked like they didn't understand the club. And it's not always about who is the best coach. There are plenty of better coaches than Michael Carrick, but rather, I think it's about who is the best for the job right now. And I think that might be the guy in situ. What do you guys make of it? Click the like button. Be sure to subscribe to United View. As I said in the intro, this one will continue to divide the fan base. I'm kind of, like I've said before, I'm kind of trying to move beyond that point and focus on now what's to come next, whether it's, nailing down the contract, how long's the contract going to be for Carrick, if indeed it's him. And most importantly, like we've spoke about, it's critical when it comes to recruitment this summer for Manchester United as well, because whoever the coach is, it's not going to matter who's in charge if they don't get the players that are needed to achieve the expectations next season. So it looks like the decision may have been made by the key power brokers at Manchester United, but has your decision been made when it comes to your health goals, your future goals, what you want to look like and feel like this summer? Well, if it's not made just yet, maybe this will make your mind up.
Today's show is sponsored by our friends Oxford Natural and their all new improved Optimum Day and Night. I've been using it and feeling the effects, Dr. Andre, but how does this even work?
Well, it controls energy. It helps with weight control and sugar control.
And there's day and there's night. What does the night do?
Well, the night means you get a deep, restful sleep. It contains magnesium to help you relax, but at the same time, it's still controlling sugar all night.
Now, it's not a magic pill, but it is gonna help you with your health goals, isn't it, Andre?
Changing metabolism takes time. 90 days, so take the 90-day Optimum Challenge.
So what are you waiting for? Scan the QR code on screen to get up to 70% off your first order using code UnitedView. No gimmicks, no needles, just results. Oxford Natural, let's get to work.
Yes, just like Manchester United since January. Just results. You can scan that QR code right there. Save up to 70% off your first order of Optimum Day and or Night. Imagine the bottles here. Shake, shake, shake. Pass it to Fleck. Pass it back. Yes, right here. You can get your Optimum Day, which is good for your weight loss goals. It also curbs your cravings. You can get your Optimum Night, which is good for your restorative sleep. Keeps your metabolism firing while you rest. You can get Optimized there as always. All the information is in the video description below. It's pinned in the chat. Go to the landing page, find out more, learn from the experts, and get optimized today. Yes. Right, we've got a lot to get into. Now, it was covered a bit yesterday with the Flex and KG show. Flex and KG spoke extensively about the news coming out yesterday regarding the Manchester United managerial position, or should I rather say head coach position. So we are going to be talking about that with talks beginning, what a new contract may look like, people talking extensively about it. Didn't we look at other candidates? We'll be talking about that from the likes of Laurie Whitwell and others. Simon Stone wrote a really interesting piece for the BBC as well, so we'll talk on that. Casemiro is back in first team training ahead of the game at the weekend against Nottingham Forest. And even though there's nothing really to play for in terms of the Premier League table and what have you moving forward, we've already got Champions League. We're probably going to finish in third place. But as we saw at the weekend against Sunderland, and we've seen multiple times this season, if Casemiro isn't playing, we're not winning. Thankfully, he's played most of the time this season, so we've been okay. But him being back in training is an important one, of course, ahead of his final match at Old Trafford this weekend. That is the last time he is going to be stepping on the hallowed turf of Old Trafford in the theatre of dreams as a Manchester United player. So important that not only is he back to win the game, but also important that he's back for his final game at Old Trafford. Of course, the last game is against Brighton, and that's away from home, isn't it, I believe? So, yes, final game at Old Trafford for him at the weekend. Also, a little bit of an update from Sully about Aurelien Tchouameni. A bit of a mixed report on that one about how if he asked to leave, he could be able to leave Manchester United. If that would be the case, they would try and push it, etc., etc. But as of right now, it looks like he might stay, but things are a bit in flux at Real Madrid at the moment. There are elections, there are new coaches to come in Jose Mourinho, and there's a lot of moving parts on that one. So we'll touch on that as well. And also, the kit's been released. The new kit's been released this morning, or the next season's kit's been released. We are going to be wearing it at the weekend against Nottingham Forest. We'll also be wearing it against Brighton in the Premier League conclusion. For those that actually haven't seen it, I'll get up on the screen very, very quickly. Most people have seen it for months at this point. You know what I mean? They float around on social media. We've even used it a few times on some of the thumbnails for transfer stories. But you can see it right there. That is the new kit. The collar is back with a bit of a black sort of line through there, a bit of white trim. You know what? The collar, I didn't realize the collar does kind of divide people a little bit, and you can see Cunha and Bumo, Ahmad all sitting there with the long sleeve. You don't really often see the long sleeve be used in the season that much, do you? You usually see the short sleeve, but yes, you see the new kit there. Like I said, I'm not honestly, when it comes to kits and designs, my decision about whether I personally like them or don't like them you're going to be shocked by this, folks, has entirely to do with, you guessed it, results. If we have a particularly bad season, I hate that kit. Like last season's kit does nothing for me. Not even I know it wasn't even that nice looking, but also it's just the fact that it's attached to a terrible season, right? If a kit is attached to an iconic season, tends to become a pretty iconic kit, doesn't it? Like my favorite is the I like 0708. I've mentioned it many times before. It's it's the strip down the back, but that's the time where we win Champions League, Premier League. Ronaldo, Berbatov, Rooney, Tevez, you name it. And the away kits that year were particularly beautiful as well. And I also like the final Sir Alex kit, the quilt one, which again was very sort of that was very polarizing, wasn't it? But so with this new one, hey, if it's a successful season, I'm not against it, right? I'm not against it at all. So that's the new kit. But the big news came out yesterday, sort of lunchtime. Like I said, Flex and KG spoke about it, but we got some more details coming out later on in the evening about it as well. So it was reported, I think actually it might have been first. Hat tip goes to the guys at Sky. Let me get the name specifically, actually, because it was Rob Dorset from Sky, Daniel Kahn. They kind of cover the Manchester United stuff at Sky. Certainly Daniel Kahn does. And it was reported that Manchester United indeed are ready to open talks with Michael Carrick to continue as head coach beyond the end of the season. Formal discussions are expected to begin before Manchester United's last game of the season versus Brighton. So that's only in the next week or two's time. United hierarchy still say they haven't ruled out the possibility of someone else taking charge. They've reached out to other possible candidates, but as things stand, Carrick is the man they will talk to formally about the role first. So their suggestion is, well, he's not got the job, but we're going to talk to him first. That's what it's going to be, which... It's a bit of a strange one at the moment with United, because I think everyone knows that Carrick's going to get it at this point, but we have to kind of go through these sort of steps to get it. So Manchester United are still insisting, well, you never know. We might talk to it still could be someone else and what have you. The real nuts and bolts of it, which is why it's going to be in the next 2 weeks, is because there's kind of this process where effectively the story is yesterday that Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox, they're going to go to Sir Jim Ratcliffe and they're going to recommend Michael Carrick. And then there's going to be this, meeting where they're going to decide in the direction that they go forward. The decision is expected, according to Laurie Whitwell, to pave the way for United to open talks with Carrick. On the ground at Carrington, Carrick is involved in planning meetings, and there is an expectation among players and staff that he gets the job. United have been weighing up their options, with Andoni Iraola and Unai Emery among the figures considered. Staff members made background checks on several candidates. This was kind of a little bit that Laurie Whitwell said about it as well, because, of course, there has been pushback on, were other people interviewed? Were they considered? This is when we're getting into, semantics of considered versus interview. But here's what Laurie had to say.
Michael Carrick is in line to become Manchester United's permanent head coach. It's been the question as we approach the end of this campaign, now that Carrick has done so well on an interim basis to guide United into the Champions League places. Would he be granted the opportunity to lead the team into that competition and beyond? Well, that's the view of Chief Executive Omar Barada and Director of Football Jason Wilcox, who are making that recommendation to the Executive Committee Board, which is headed up by Sir Jim Ratcliffe. The Glazers have the majority of shares in the club, with Ratcliffe the minority shareholder, but they are content to let Ratcliffe take the lead on these kind of big football decisions. We wait to see if he ratifies that call, but the anticipation is that he will listen to the advice of those on the ground at Carrington. They did look at different candidates: Andoni Iraola, Unai Emery.
By the way, this happens at every club as well. So this is what's funny with Manchester United, and you would only think it's at Manchester United that the explicit process of what it takes to hire a coach gets kind of scrutinized so much. Like the idea of a CEO and a director of football recommending someone to be the head coach, but that decision ultimately goes down to the chairman or the the owner or the whatever it may be. That happens at every club. You know what I mean? That's literally how it works. So, every director of football or CEO, they got their recommendation, then they'll go to the person who makes the key decision, right? So that's like not out of the realm of normal at all. That's just how it tends to work in football. But yes, and Sir Jim Ratcliffe, it's funny when they say like, oh, he, they let him decide the big football decisions, and you sort of go, well, I suppose yes, but in the sense of he's dealing with their recommendation, he just says yes or no. You know what I mean? In the same way that, he's left to the big football decisions, but in the same way, it's also explicitly said that if the Glazers at any point wanted to go in a different direction or had a different idea, they would be able to do that because they're the majority shareholders, they're the majority owners. So really, kind of actually the story yesterday is that Omar Barada and Jason Wilcox have come to their decision. They're going to recommend it to Ratcliffe. But I mean, if Ratcliffe's been to some of the games and that recently and what have you, seen some of the results, then I think he'd probably, and it's not as if these guys don't all talk anyway. It's sort of played up as if, Jason Wilcox and Omar Barada maybe don't, well, I have no idea what their recommendation is going to be, but it's, I think they sort of sit together in the director's box on a match day. So I'm sure this is not so much of a, uncertainty, it's more of a formality. But in terms of speaking to other people,
Ratcliffe take the lead on these kind of big football decisions. We wait to see if he ratifies that call, but the anticipation is that he will listen to the advice of those on the ground at Carrington. They did look at different candidates, Andoni, Iraola, Unai Emery, among them, making background checks, but it has been decided by those people that work with Carrick that he is entitled, deserves, is the right man to take the team into next season. Now, I guess that would lead to contract talks and we can see how they will go. And I suppose Sunday brings a certain deadline, perhaps because that is United's final home game of the season. And it would be great, I think, from a lot of people's point of view, if Carrick could take the mic after that game, speak with authority, speak with clarity and set the tone for the summer ahead.
So it's interesting, really, what what Laurie is talking about there. The reason why it's interesting is because there has been this pushback a little bit, which is, right. So I see, Man United haven't interviewed anyone else, right? I saw that, it shows the level of ambition of Ineos, and it shows the level of ambition of those in charge that, they've got their yes man, and they're happy with that kind of thing. And it is funny because you can't win, can you? You really can't win. I remember when that the few days before the FA Cup final, you remember that? The few days before the FA Cup final, when it was like Erik ten Hag's going to go, and we were interviewing, whatever, with Thomas Frank, Kieran McKenna, I think Thomas Tuchel then, who else? Marco Silva, I think. There might have been a couple other names at that point. And at that time, the narrative was, well, it's incredibly disrespectful. It's incredibly disrespectful to Erik ten Hag to be talking to these other people while someone's still in charge. Granted, he's a permanent, Carrick's an interim. But it's still very disrespectful. You can't do that. Now it's, why is there nobody else been interviewed? Nobody else has been interviewed. I don't know what's going on. So you can't win. As far as, and again, this is when you get into, I suppose, the semantics of it as well. Of, okay, what does talking to people or consider people? What? Because this is when you get into the weird, like how football works as well, isn't it? Of like, I think a lot of people assume that sometimes it is like the formal job process, like any of us would normally have. You apply for the job or what have you, and you have a set date that you go in and you do your interview and blah blah blah. And that can certainly be the case, but sometimes as well for big jobs, particularly if there's somebody in the job at that time, sometimes it won't be as official as like an interview. You know what I mean? Talk to representatives, talk to agents. You might even technically, someone from Man United might talk to that person, So I don't know if it's the whole like, they didn't interview anyone, because that's, when you just can see a few steps ahead where where this is going to go. The narrative now is going to be, I think, the fact that, we didn't consider anybody else. We didn't look at anybody else. We didn't talk to anybody else. And, and that's going to sort of come back to bite us, for next season or anything like that. Again, I push back on that. I think that, as Laurie Whitwell said, I think that other people were considered. I think a lot of some of the names that have been thrown around are just unrealistic or not the right fit. If Luis Enrique was legitimately available tomorrow, right? Legitimately available tomorrow, you of course do everything you can to go and get him. But when he's on the verge of signing a new 3 or 4 year contract, just winning the Champions League with PSG, I just don't think it's a conversation. I don't. There are some names that are involved in the World Cup that I think would be really interesting. I was an advocate of Thomas Tuchel the last time. Nagelsmann's an interesting one. I don't know if that's as a sure thing as I think a lot of people play that one up to be. I think there are a lot of questions actually about Julian Nagelsmann. A lot of questions about him and whether he'd be right for the Manchester United job specifically. I don't think there's any concern about him being a coach, but in terms of this job specifically. Andoni Iraola, I think it's funny that the same questions, some of the same questions that are being posed at Carrick are exactly the same questions that can be posed to Andoni Iraola that don't want to get spoken about. So I think that, I look at the other options available when they're available. And as we touched on yesterday, Flex and myself too, I think the Man United job is also so unique and so specific that I really don't think it is about just who's the best coach. If this was a case of who's the best coach out there, then of course Michael Carrick wouldn't even be involved in the conversation. You go, absolutely not, absolutely not. But I don't think at United it is the best coach. I just don't think it works like that. If this was another club, yes. At Man United, there's all those other things of how do you handle the media? How do you handle the pressure? How's your relationship with the players? How's your relationship, with the crowd? How's your relationship with the fans? And then you get into how do you manage these big games? How do you manage these big moments? How do you get the best out of what you've got? And, there's PTSD all over the place. Someone brought it up on a super chat yesterday, and it was so true. There's PTSD all over the place. With the PTSD attached to Carrick is because of obviously the Ollie stuff, and it's like we don't want to repeat that. But then also there really should then be equal amounts of PTSD attached, I think, with these Iraolas, with these Xabi Alonsos, with these Nagelsmanns, with these, Oliver Glasner, because we've tried it all. We've tried it all. We've tried the okay, this guy's going to make a step up, doesn't. We've tried this guy wins everywhere he goes. We've tried this is the most experienced person ever, like Louis van Gaal. We tried it. We tried it all. So I think there's PTSD with every single candidate, every single candidate. So yeah, I think, and if the biggest, if one of the bigger pushbacks that you can give is in 18 months' time you'll be sorry, then we can say that about every manager, because in 18 months' time with every coach, we've been sorry. Well, that it's usually about 2 years, 2 or 3 years, but you get my point. That if the pushback is, well, in a couple of years it's gonna fall apart, it's been that way for a decade plus, and if anything, with most coaches, the chances are that it won't work out. Honestly, the shelf life of a manager or a coach in football is unbelievably short, and the percentages of people working out versus people not working out, is the large percentage of people not working out. So I think I will go to this in just a second, about the pros and cons, because I did a ChatGPT analysis on this morning. It's actually quite interesting, so I'll get that up in just a second. But I think the sort of doom the sort of doom prophets that are out there of, like, in 12 months time or in 6 months time or in 18 months time, you'll be saying that Carrick needs to go and Carrick wasn't right. That's entirely possible. I can't say that won't be the case. But it's also entirely possible that I could say that if, pick one, Andoni Iraola, Nagelsmann, Tuchel, I could say that about anyone, literally anyone, because we have, look at the reputations that some of these coaches came with, particularly sort of our last two, in Erik ten Hag. This was a guy that was, dismantling Real Madrid at the Bernabeu with Ajax and going unbeaten with Ajax. What a fabulous reputation he had coming here. In 18 months or a couple of years, excuse me, he turns into a fraud. Ruben Amorim, guy in his 30s, great reputation. Just destroyed Man City in the Champions League, won these Portuguese title. And he has a really strong reputation. Now he's arguably Man United's worst head coach in sort of modern history, isn't he? So it can go bad for anyone, anyone. And I would also say I don't even know if it can go as bad as it did under Ruben. So I think if the real pushback is fear of what can happen in the future, then I think that's a bit of a wash, because it can just happen with anyone for that part. Simon Stone said something really interesting when he was doing his sort of piece on it yesterday. He said this. He said, "I don't get the Ollie comparisons or the negativity. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer finished 3rd and 2nd. Man United ended last season 15th. Every managerial appointment is a risk. Carrick surely deserves his chance." And also, what I'll do, by the way, as well, I'll put on the screen. I meant to put this up earlier, but I forgot. There you go. I'll put it up on the screen. Are you happy if Carrick gets the permanent Man United head coach job? 1 for yes, 2 for no. Get your opinions in the chat. But I both partially agree and disagree with kind of what Simon Stone is saying there. I think that when you do that first bit, I don't get the Ollie comparisons or the negativity, because I agree with that. I do agree that I don't really get that. I mean, I do get the comparisons because he was a former player. He was part of the coaching staff, etc., etc. That bit there where he says, Ollie finished 3rd and 2nd. This is where, again, football is kind of strange a bit, because that does leave out a lot of context there, doesn't it? Yes, Ollie finished 3rd and 2nd, but there was this feeling of he couldn't get over the line. There was this feeling of, couldn't win trophies. There was this feeling of how high can we go? And there was this feeling of, it was only going to be counter-attack football. And when he tried to evolve into something else, he couldn't do it. Now, also, you would say that Ollie's interim spell, he didn't even get Champions League. The team tailed off and they couldn't do it. Michael Carrick didn't do that. As far as where Michael Carrick would finish in the league for his first full season, we don't know. He's already technically done better than Ollie did in his period of time there as well. But what I do really agree with is this part here, where he says every managerial appointment is a risk. And that is true. That is absolutely true. Every managerial appointment is a risk. For your bad examples of Ruben Amorim or what have you that can go completely wrong, you could see someone like Hansi Flick, who was an interim at Bayern Munich and then went on to become win everything. He won everything at Bayern Munich, and he still ended up leaving Bayern Munich because they were messing around with his contract. And then he went to Germany and he fell completely on his face. He's just won La Liga with Barcelona, right? So it just goes to show that good coaches, they're out there. And prior to that, Hansi Flick, what was his experience? I think he'd just been with the German national team forever, right? As Joachim Löw's assistant. And prior to that, I think maybe he'd managed like Hoffenheim in the Bundesliga or something like that a while before, right? A while before. So we can focus on, examples where it hasn't gone right, but there are also a lot of instances where it has gone right, for things that are working and you carry them on, right? So, I agree and disagree with what Simon Stone is saying there. I agree with I understand the Ollie comparisons, but I think they're quite superficial. And I certainly don't get the negativity of finishing third from where we are. I think if you just say, well, Ollie finished third and second, and that kind of suggests that it was actually quite good at United during that time, you go, we'll push back a little bit on that. But I totally agree with what he's saying at the end there, where every managerial appointment is a risk. Every single one. Actually, let me have a look at Hansi Flick's record, his career, because it's a really, really interesting one when it comes to sort of his success. So so it's amazing. So he was his job before he started getting involved with the national team was, I was right, Hoffenheim from 2000 to 2005, right? After that, he was an assistant at Salzburg, and then he was an assistant for Germany from 2006. From 2006, and then he was 2014. He became a sporting director. He was a sporting director. This is a guy in Hansi Flick that, when he became the interim manager in November of 2019, he hadn't been in that position to manage a team in 14 years. 14. It would never happen at United. Could you imagine the fan base? Could you imagine that? Could you imagine the fan base doing that? What are you talking about? I don't care if he's played, because he played for Bayern Munich over 100 times. I don't care if he played for Man United. He's done all that. He hasn't managed the club 15 years. Imagine about a club 15 years. I don't care if he's assistant. I don't care. No chance. Does well at Bayern. And then even after Germany, he could have had the Barcelona fans. Well, I'm not sure about that. Didn't work out at Germany. No, goes win La Liga. So the point being is, and I've said this for every manager, I'm not a big person on basing someone off failures in their career. Everybody fails. Everybody fails. Everybody has setbacks in their career. It doesn't make you a bad player. It doesn't make you a bad coach. I know, even because, and this is when I talk about the reputational hit. I'll still say, even now, I don't think Ruben Amorim or Erik ten Hag are bad coaches. I really don't think. I don't think they're bad coaches. I think they are no different from the other people that have come and gone at Manchester United. Of that managerial dugout seat, that position, it's tough. It's tough. And even if you're a great coach, it's not enough. It's not enough to be a good coach at Manchester United. It's not as simple as that. You have to be the right person for that job at that time, with those people that are currently there, with those players that are currently there as well. Are you the best fit for that job? They weren't. They clearly were not. So yeah, it doesn't make them bad coaches or anything like that. It just makes them human, if anything. Interesting on the poll, which is still going in the chat. We're going for the whole show. Are you happy if Carrick gets the permanent Manchester United head coach job? 86% of you saying yes, 14% being no, which is really, really interesting. Really interesting, because like I said, I think I've spoken about this a lot as well recently too, that I do think if that poll is accurate, right, which I think that's pretty reflective of, I do obviously look, there's concerns, there's some red flags that you would hope get removed and ironed out and what have you, but I do think the discontent or what have you, or the pushback, I do think is just a loud vocal minority. And that's not to diminish them at all. That's not to say that you are wrong. You are perfectly entitled and right to have your opinion. But at the same time, this is what I've been pushing back a lot on as well. I don't think you can pretend you're not being heard. This is kind of a weird sort of fallacy that's going around at the moment. Nobody's listening. No one will let us be heard, which I just don't think is true. Like I said, there's a poll there, or just because 86% of people think one way, does mean 86% of people are being bought off by the club. 86% of people are being, brown envelopes. 86% of people are just completely, that 86% of people aren't really Manchester United fans. It's just a prevailing opinion, isn't it? It's just a prevailing opinion at the moment. I think, like Lil Yo-Yo says there, I think that it maybe doesn't suggest that, like, because this is the other thing too. And I'm glad you said that, Lil Yo-Yo, because I think if you suggest, I think Carrick should get a go at it, I should go at it next season, then that doesn't mean you're completely co-signing everything that Carrick's done so far. Do you know what I mean? Because that's where I'm at. Like, I think he should get a go of it. I think he should get a transfer window. I think he should get a pre-season. And then if it doesn't work out, it doesn't work out. We can find someone else. But that's not to say that, like, I see Sunderland and go, oh, I'm really happy with that. That's exactly, and we're going to win the league playing like that. Of course not. Of course not. It's not like I see the Leeds game and I go, oh yeah, that's fine. Of course not. And there are things that he needs to figure out. There are things that he needs to fix. The recruitment is so critical in the summer, so critical. And I think that if it's a strong summer, we will see a difference in performances and what have you. But if I have to make the decision, which which Man United do, then I would lean more towards Carrick. He's in the job. There is so much work to do. The players are happy. There's work to be done. But also, if it gets to December and it doesn't work out, then we'll find someone else, and there'll be people available after the World Cup too, and it might actually be the better time for them at that point of time as well. So I think we act like if we stick with Carrick, we're locked in for 5 years, which I don't think is the case at all. I think it was Beth from TUS say she would give Carrick a 1-year contract. I'm not sure if he would take that. I think you have to be careful with what's insulting and what isn't insulting kind of thing. I think you might go with like a 2-year deal or something like that. I think Ruben Amorim said it himself when he first came in. He got the 2.5-year contract, which was short. And he said, look, at the end of 2.5 years, you'll know if I'm the right man or not. We knew after 6 months, or we knew after a year. So I think if Carrick got like a 2-year deal, 2 plus an option, if Man United want to extend that, it's probably that. He's not going to be I think the highest paid manager in the league. Interestingly, Diego Simeone, highest paid manager in the world. More you know. And then, like I said, if it doesn't go out, I don't think it'll cost the club a huge amount, and we'll move on. We'll move on into something else. But as of now, I think it's the right position to go in. A couple of super chats, and I'll get to my scout report that I did. Fan Verdict says, "What do you think Carrick needs to focus on next season?" Well, and this will get into what the scout report as well. I think that he's got to focus on building up a bit more of there does feel an element of like chaos, like we're on the edge quite a lot in terms of style of play. I think that I'm not surprised by some of those metrics that people bring up, i.e. we concede more shots or our XG against us have gone up, because as Carrick has adapted to the squad that he's got, he's played more counter-attack, so you're naturally inviting pressure. You're inviting more shots. You're inviting, them you're saying, have the ball, come at us, we'll take it, go up the other end and score. So I think he would have to build up play. So when you are playing at home against those teams that are going to sit off, aren't going to come onto you, you've got to be able to dominate those games and dominate those ones in style. In terms of objectives for next season, I've mentioned this several times. I think that it's get into the Champions League again. If you can get to maybe the first knockout stage of the Champions League and then go deep in the cup, maybe win it. The thing is, you never know with the draw that you get. But something like that, I think we need it's not a maintenance season, because I still see that as forward momentum, but it's sort of maintaining what we've got now with a little bit added on. We don't want to sprint before we can jog kind of thing. I think that if we can maintain what we've got now, which is get back in the Champions League again, go as far in the Champions League as you can, let's get out that league phase. And then in one of those cups, depending on what happens, go deep in that. And then next season, after 2 seasons of, sustainable Champions League football, you've had 2 big summer windows with Champions League money. Hopefully by that point, I think that's when you talk about, right, Project 2028 and going for the league and what have you. But football is just, it's also not to say that anything can happen. Liverpool won the league last season. They're 5th, Arsenal look like they're going to win the league this season, even though like a couple of weeks, even though they were top all season. Then like 2 weeks ago, it looked like they weren't going to win the league. Now Man City screwed up, and now it looks like Arsenal are going to win the league again. So who knows? I mean, I remember at the beginning of, or the end of last season, beginning of this season with Ruben Amorim, the objectives were all over the place, weren't they? My goodness, they were, even if it's just the top half, that's better than 15th. Some was like just European football in general, 7th and above. Some were like Champions League football. And look where we're at now. We've qualified with Champions League football with time to spare and really straightforward. To some that were saying like 7th place or just top half, that would have been unthinkable this time last year. So it's a difficult question to ask, because so much can happen in the space of 12 months. But I think, like I said, I'd be looking to maintain and get a little bit more. Sir Ryan says, opposed to Ollie as interim because success would force a hire, but now that Carrick did well, we must hire him. Hair-thinning hypocrisy at its best. Oh, that's not very nice, that last bit there. The difference between Ollie and Carrick? Simple, Sir Ryan. I can answer that question. The reason I didn't want Ollie back as the interim is because I did think it was rehashing what we have done before. And I don't think, and this will be the difference is I don't think Michael Carrick is Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. That's my thing. I think the comparison between him and Ole, I think is just, superficial. I think that's, I think it's just superficial. I think it's the fact that he is an interim. He was part of his coaching staff. And because he's done well since he's come in, that makes him Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. The reason I didn't want Ole Gunnar Solskjaer back is I don't think we should be going back to Ole Gunnar Solskjaer. That's why. And then as far as the hair thing, bro, you get on camera in front of hundreds of people or thousands of people and have yourself picked apart, because not many people are willing to do it. And it takes a lot, but I appreciate the super chats. We'll move on into to Matt and says, I think hiring Carrick is fine, especially with who's available. He is probably the most stable option we have. Curious how long his contract will be. Like I said, I think it will probably be 2+1, maybe something like that. I'd be shocked if it was like 5 years or anything like that. That would be a whole... Yeah, you never know. Chiak says a sustainable top 4 performance without Bruno, player of the year. Well, that is another thing as well, isn't it? Is Bruno Fernandes and others going to have the same level of performance that he had this season as well? We shall see. Right, let's go to this this little scout report on the Carrick thing. I think I'm caught up with all of the stories about that. It's all kind of the sort of same stuff, saying again there could be this recommendation that's made, and then a decision is made. It could be a case of, I think there might be an idea for it to be like announced like either the day of or maybe like after the final game of the season. I wouldn't be shocked if it was kind of like that, in and around that. So that's like a couple of weeks time. So maybe we see some announcement in the next couple of weeks. But on this, I went to Scout Jupiter. And asked the situation. I asked, give me some information, give me some data, give me some comparison, give me the pros and cons of getting Michael Carrick in the summer as a permanent Manchester United head coach. And it was quite interesting. It said here, the headline numbers are powerful. 15 Premier League games, 10 wins, 3 draws, 2 defeats, 33 points, 2.20 points per game. United have gone from 7th to 3rd, secured Champions League qualification, and no Premier League club has won more points since Carrick took charge on January 13th. Those are pretty impressive numbers, isn't it? As it says, he's made himself impossible to ignore on results, mood, dressing room connection, and short-term impact. But the question is he right for the long term? Let's go into the preferred system, because this is quite interesting here, where it says about what's his style of play. Carrick's core shape is a 4-2-3-1 at Middlesbrough. He used that system in 112 of the 124 championship matches. It's important, obviously, different than the back three or anything like that. But it's interesting when it comes to the style of play here, because it says here something that we haven't really associated with him at Manchester United so far is Carrick's Middlesbrough were a possession-heavy front foot team. Among championship sides that stayed in the division during his time there, they ranked top for goals, top for shots, top for expected goals, top for successful passes and touches in the opposition box, and second for average possession at 55.2%. Which is quite interesting, isn't it? That's quite interesting, because that is not something you would associate with Manchester United since Carrick's come in, right? You wouldn't say that Man United are possession heavy, front foot. We're not top for goals or expected goals, successful passes, and we're not high for average possession or anything like that. So it does make you wonder, is it a case of, he's not able to coach that in the Premier League? Is it a case of him going, well, that's my ideal, but with the players I've got, with the time I've got, am I able to implement that in this short space of time? Look what happened when he tried to do it, right? He tried to implement it midway through a season, didn't work out, lost every single game. Look at the players that we've got. Our players can't pass the ball, let alone keep it for, minutes on end or anything like that. So it's like with everything under Carrick, isn't it? It's an answer, but it's not an answer, because some of the answers that we're looking for, we can't get, So when the pushback will be, where it says here, championship. It's championship. Well, we don't have, well, we do have the answers for the Premier League, but apparently they're not enough, are they? Because they're only 15 games. So that again, that will be interesting to see what happens in the summer, if that is an evolution or if he keeps it as is. It says here, it tells you Carrick's not just a vibes manager. The idea there is a clear idea: control the ball, build through the midfield, use width, push numbers into the final third, and attack at speed when the transition is there. This is interesting too, because this is something that people have brought up at Man United. The same Opta analysis also points to the main worry. Carrick was criticised at Middlesbrough for tactical inflexibility, limited in-game shape changes, and struggling when teams worked out how to defend deep against him. Middlesbrough started brilliantly under him, but later plateaued and failed to win promotion. That is a concern for United. The Premier League adapts quickly. Managers will sit in a low block, deny Bruno space, stop Cobby receiving on the half turn, force United wide, and ask, what is Carrick's plan B? Which is, again, really, really interesting, because that has been something that was brought up during this time here at United, right? Which game was it? Was it the Newcastle game? It might have been the West Ham game, maybe, something like that, in and around that time. And that was the thing at the time. Against Chelsea, 80-minute substitution. You can't wait that long, and looked a bit concerned to change it. Did you wait too long? I think it was the Leeds game. That was the one I was criticising him, saying he changed it 55 minutes, should have just changed it at half-time, blah, blah, blah. But then that criticism was actually then, I think, answered, because at Brentford, he hooks Ahmed at half-time and goes, right, I'm going to a back three because I've got to win this game, you know? In matches, he has substitute defenders. In matches, he has made substitutions, like I said, at half-time, 55 minutes. And what we're playing at the moment, certainly I don't think is that, you know. So that would suggest to me actually some flexibility, quite a bit of flexibility, actually, because we've pivoted to plan B, to win a game against Brentford, but people didn't like it. We're playing on the transition at the moment, where previous stats would suggest maybe he would like to have more possession of the ball, but people don't like it. So that's interesting. But again, it's a small sample size. Now, these impressive statistics, I mentioned it earlier on, most points since in the Prem since Carrick arrived. Nobody in the league has taken more points than us during that period. Over a short period of time, that is a short sample. The current spell, 2.2 matches, 2.2 points per game, which would be 84 points over a 38-game Premier League season. I don't think we'll get that next season, but you never know. He's won big games over the likes of City, Arsenal, Villa, Chelsea, Liverpool, etc. And of course, he's lifted the dressing room as well. But this is also the really the concerning part, because this is a full report here. The XG warning, right? BBC data analysis says 8 teams have created better chances than United based on expected goals since Carrick took charge. That means the results are better than chance quality suggests. Now, again, this is when you get into how you really view the game, I suppose, isn't it? This is when you get into how much weight do you put on XG? Are you an XG person? Are you a stats person? Are you not a stats person? That divides. The other part is United are finishing unsustainably well. It says that United have had the best shot conversion rate in the league during Carrick's spell and have scored 7 more goals than expected from the chances they have created. That is great in the short term, but it usually cools over time, which is what a lot of people have said too. They've said that evidence is there to suggest that these statistics, they catch up to you. Right, they catch up to you. They will always catch up to you. Look at Nottingham Forest, from last season. They overperformed their XG. Look where they are now. Look at Aston Villa. They said they were overperforming for a long time, and they dropped off a little bit as well. What part I would push back to this a little bit is that Ruben Amorim, I think, wasn't he top of the league for overperforming or underperforming XG, however way it is. Basically, we should have scored way more goals under Ruben Amorim than we did, but we didn't. And this is when we get into my favorite thing, which is hypothetical FC, which is, are we focusing on things that didn't happen versus things that actually did happen, which we have done for like 2 years, isn't it? When we did we would have won that game, but that was offside. Or we would have won that game if that guy scored that goal. We would have won that game if this person didn't get sent off. Are we focusing too heavily on the stuff that didn't happen versus the stuff that does happen? And as far as the while it will figure it out over time, maybe it will, I guess, maybe it won't, right? If you improve the players that we've got next season, maybe actually our XG will go up as well. This part I don't like, where it says that goalkeeper performance has helped because Lommans has prevented 2.8 more goals than expected from the shots he faced since Carrick arrived. For me, that's what a goalkeeper is meant to do. I'm not sure we can complain too much when we're saying, our old keeper, Andre Onana, isn't saving any shots. Now a goalkeeper is saving shots, and that's a reason not to hire the coach. It's kind of why you purchase a goalkeeper, is to make saves and bail you out the shit if needed, organize the defense. And as far as the conceding more chances or more shots, like I touched on earlier, it would only be logical if you've switched from Ruben Amorim, which was a bit more possession focused. He did adapt a bit this season, even though people say he didn't, but he did. He went more direct. If you go from a situation where you've got more of the ball to less of the ball, it's only likely that you're probably going to concede some more shots. And like I said, I think that's what the goalkeeper is there for. But this is the part, I think, that is a big part for next season, certainly. United are not dominating games more than before. BBC Analysis says United have taken 2 fewer shots per game under Carrick than under Amorim and have conceded slightly more. That does not mean Carrick has failed, but it does mean the improvement is not as dominant underneath the surface as the league table suggests. And this is this is also why all of these statistics, as I've touched on many a time, they're all totally valid. It's not as if they don't exist. They do. They really, really do. The reason I would just push back on some of them, like this part here, where it says, United aren't dominating games as before. If you framed it like that to me and said, right, under Ruben Amorim, you'll have 2 more shots per game and you'll concede less, but you'll lose more games. This is when you get into like the whole, are you splitting hairs here a little bit? We're taking 2 fewer shots, but we're scoring more goals. We're conceding slightly more goals, but we're winning more games. Is that the price you pay for a different tactical idea? Which is, all right, you might concede some more goals and take some more shots, but you might win some more games. So this is ultimately the trouble. Like, it finishes up perfectly here. The problem is that it's 15 matches, isn't it? Any statistic, positive or negative, really, for what it's worth, is difficult to judge on only 15 games. And we've only got those games to decide, really, before the decision is going to be made. So there isn't, as the list goes on here, there are pros of hiring Michael Carrick. He's earned the trust. He fits the current squad. He restored belief. It gives United continuity. He may be more aligned with this Ineos structure. The cons are also there too. I disagree with the Ollie comparison, but people are still putting it there. This part here is not proving he can sustain elite results. The only way to prove that, though, is to do it. You know what I mean? There's no other way to prove it than do it. The underlying numbers, are not all elite, which is these underlying metrics people are pointing to. And I guess it's just a case of whether they're going to improve or they're not. Some say they will, some say they won't. This part here where it says United may need a very specific, or he may need, a very specific summer window. I just think United needs a very specific summer window, to be honest with you. I think United, we've touched on this so many times, haven't we? Andoni Iraola, Oliver Glasner, Luis Enrique, or whoever, they all need a very specific summer window, don't they? We need... I cannot stress it enough how I think it's remarkable how a club like Manchester United can finish 3rd in the Premier League, and we need 3 midfielders in the summer, 3 central midfielders. How can you even get 3rd place in the Premier League with that massive void in your squad? The answer, I suppose, is Casemiro, isn't it? Casemiro is that great. But yeah, we need 3 midfielders in the summer, left winger, full backs. We've got 5 centre-backs under contract. We probably need another because most of them are injured or young. There's so much repair that needs to be done there. So I don't know if that's a Carrick-specific summer window. I think any coach needs a specific summer window at Manchester United. And then this part here is totally true as well. You know, he does lack European experience as a head coach. Certainly, if you're going to compare names like Unai Emery and Luis Enrique, I mean, my goodness me, that is two of the most qualified European coaches you're going to get, in the sense of Luis Enrique's won Champions Leagues at multiple clubs, but he's not attainable. Unai Emery is probably going to win the Europa League again. That's because that's what he does. But also, I suppose when it comes to Unai, even Unai is an interesting one. I'd be really interested to see how well Unai Emery did at Old Trafford. Because he's another one, isn't there, about making, the step up? Is he better with smaller teams? Like Aston Villa is like a perfect club for him. It's big, but it's not too big, and they adore him there. But it's Europa League. Man United want to be heading towards Champions League. But look, we're back in the Champions League for the first time in 2 years this season. So who are we to say? We're a big Champions League club. But these names that we're talking about as, these European records, Luis Enrique is not available. Thomas Tuchel, as of right now, he's not available, and he just signed a new contract with England. Unai Emery, I mean, it feels like he's unavailable, doesn't it? I mean, unless Man United can make a massive offer, but I don't feel like he's going to be going anywhere anytime soon. In fact, I wouldn't even be shocked if Unai wins the Europa League and then signs a new contract or anything like that, right? So, I think that they're just those names that would be clearly, I think, preferable candidates over Michael Carrick. I just don't know are available. And then we get into kind of like the wishy-washy candidates where absolutely top coaches, but are they right for this job? You know what I mean? Are they right for this job at this time with this group? Difficult to say. Manage says, we can't convince a Villa manager to come and leave to United. Doesn't work like that nowadays, man. I mean, if we put a load of money to Unai and you said you can manage Man United, I'm sure it'd be tempting. But if he's got a contract at Villa, if Villa get back into the Champions League this season by winning the Europa League, and Man United, it's a big job, but it's also not a stable job. He's got a job there for as long as he wants it at Aston Villa. Fucking hell. Unai Emery this season, beginning of this season, Villa were like 18th. Villa were like 18th at the start of this season. They started this season horrifically, really, really poorly, and then boom, went on a massive run. So you would think you can go get the Aston Villa manager, but it's not like us when we had Sir Alex going, do you want to be the manager after Sir Alex? Here you go. This is Man United after 13 plus years of turmoil, after finishing 15th just 12 months ago, in an environment that you don't know the people you're working with, the players. You've asked them to run. Whether or not they will actually do that is another question. So this is when I go back to, there are so many good coaches and better coaches out there than Carrick, but at the same time, there are also people that they might not also be the best fit for what this job actually entails. At Man United, it's not just a coaching job. That's the other part of it as well. It's at Man United, it's not just another coaching job. It isn't. Paradon says no other club would have made this hire. I disagree. I disagree, because I think if any club sacked someone and then that person came in and got the most points out of anyone in the league, I think the majority of those clubs would hire that person. I do. I really do. I think I totally disagree with that no other club would make this hire. If you're talking about specifically Michael Carrick, then that's when you get into the, he's not as a sexy name or anything like that, right? He's not as a sexy name. But as far as no other club would do it, like I said, I look at Hansi Flick's a great example of a club that did do it and did well. Man United's an example of Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, where ultimately it didn't work out. There are a million examples of interims that may have done well and got the job and didn't work out. Roberto Di Matteo is another one that didn't work out. He was an interim, won the Champions League, didn't work out. Some do, some don't. So the suggestion that no other club would operate like this is just bullshit, really, to be honest with you. Like, of course other clubs would. If you think if Chelsea, example now, if Chelsea had, when they sacked Enzo Maresca, if it was that, what's his name? Callum, what's his face at the moment? Callum, is it Mc something? I forget, whatever his name is, the guy at Chelsea. If he'd come in at the same time as Carrick and got the same amount of points as Carrick at Chelsea, right? And they were finishing third now, you think there would be conversations about him keeping the job? There absolutely would. You know what I mean? There absolutely would be conversations. Same with Callum McFarlane. Thank you, guys. I think it'd be the same thing. Same with, like I said, same with Hansi Flick. You know, if any coach came in and performed the way that Carrick has, they'd be in the conversation. Of course they would. Absolutely, of course they would. We'd be saying, how could they not? You know, and if it's an experience issue, there have been multiple coaches that are at clubs that probably shouldn't be there in terms of their managerial experience. One's in a Champions League final, or close to a Champions League final. Vincent Kompany, he's got to semi-final, excuse me. You know, and he's done incredibly well in the Bundesliga. Right, I'm speaking on Carrick specifically. Right, so this is when I get back to, I think this is another part of it. It's a Michael Carrick thing, I think. That this is also the other part of it too. I've mentioned this many times, and I'm kind of a bit reluctant to even bring it up because it does touch on some sort of like iffy ground. But I do think there is an element of, he's just not exciting. You know, he's not an exciting guy, Michael Carrick. Michael Carrick, who's your manager? Well, we got Michael. We ended up hiring the interim that was Michael Carrick, and you go, who are other teams getting? They're getting Andoni Iraola. Oh, they're getting Oliver Glasner. Ooh, they're getting Xabi Alonso. Oh, they're getting, you know, whoever. You know, yeah, it just doesn't seem exciting, and I think that is going to test people's patience this summer too. In the same way that, you know, when we go after players, or we go after players, and then teams around us start signing players. Let's say Chelsea get 2 or 3 players, Arsenal get a player, City get a player, and we don't get any a player, or the player we get isn't as attractive as the other player. We start going, oh, what, they got this, and this, and we got this. It's like a kid at Christmas. That doesn't seem fair. They got these exciting ones. I got this, you know, and there's a feeling of, you know, they purchased from, I don't know, Amazon, and we purchased from Temu. And it is just remarkable how it works as well, because Clopum says here, which is funny, because I think there would be a general prevailing sense. If you said to the Man United fans, should Jose come back? You would have some that would say yes, but I think the majority would say no. But we as a opposition fan will see like Real Madrid and see Jose being linked with it. And it's like universal, this is good for football. This is good. Jose back in a big job. I like to see it. I like to see Jose back in a big job. And I think Jose, I mean, who knows how that will work out with him at Madrid. Would I be shocked if he went and won La Liga or won Champions League? No, because again, I really don't think it's those top jobs like Real Madrid. I think United's in this category too. I don't think it's necessarily about coaching or anything like that. I think it's part of it, but I really do think it's just in those clubs, yeah. In those clubs, it's just if you can just the players are so good that if you can actually like. If you can just manage the players, the football and that will kind of take care of itself. You know, that's a bit what Don Carlo did there, or even like Zinedine Zidane. I'm most amazing tactician in the world, but I've got good players. I know what they can do. They respect me. That's the important part. Do they respect you? Yes. Do they listen to you? What you have to say? Yes. You have a good relationship with them? Yes. Can you manage their agent? Can you manage their personalities? Yes. And then, you know, you go. That's it. Nobody said that about Pep and Klopp. Well, certainly because Man City are not Manchester United. Klopp's another part of it as well, man. Particularly, look at it this season. Look at Liverpool this season. It goes with, I think, actually, Jurgen Klopp, of course, great tactician, but what doesn't get spoken about enough is he used to even say it. His first assistant, I forget his name. It's a really difficult one to pronounce. They called him the Brain. I forget his name. The Brain. He was like Bosnian or Herzegovinian or something like that. He's the Brain. And then he had Pep Linders, who's currently the City assistant head coach as well. And look how he managed the personalities at Liverpool. Look at how the personalities haven't been managed this season. You've had Salah, or last season, even last season, Salah was doing those interviews trying to get new contracts or whatever. Van Dijk saying stuff, all sorts going on. Not good behind the scenes. Those top coaches and top managers, they know how to manage big players and big teams. And like I said, and that's when your coaching staff, I think, then gets involved. Sir Alex was the best at it. Steve McLaren puts on good sessions. Carlos Queiroz puts on good sessions. Walter Smith, experience, from Scotland, get him in for a little bit. Brian Kidd knows the club, knows me, get him in. Constantly changing the backroom staff, shaking things up because the game evolves. But the head figure stays the same, and you manage. You manage the players. Your job is to manage the players, and I think that's also why. I can kind of work this one with Carrick a little bit, I suppose, is because you've got Steve Holland there, who's been there, seen it, done it all in football. But I do think those top jobs are, again, I think that's why Jose, even at this stage in his career, still does have, I think that's the person I was looking for, yes. And Jurgen Klopp used to wax lyrical about him, say he's the brain. I think they had a big fallout in the end. They didn't talk to each other. So, yeah, I think it's not necessarily just about the best coach. It's about the best, what's your coaching staff? How can you handle the players? How can you manage the players? And arguably no one he's managed or handled better than Casemiro, who is back in training ahead of the what will be his final game at Old Trafford at the weekend. Of course, he missed the game against Sunderland. So great to have Cass back, of course, for his last game at Old Trafford. It will be emotional. I'm sure he'll get the substitution send-off where everyone raises to applaud him. And what a player, what a leader, what an ending. I know that at different points there has been the whole, should we have a conversation with him? But I'm not sure it can end much better. And I would recommend everyone to go and check out the full interview that he did with Rio. It was excellent. And also very quickly on Aurélien Tchouameni, this was a bit of a weird one from Salah yesterday. He kind of said that if Aurélien Tchouameni asks to leave Real Madrid, they would be open to letting him go. Then it would be up to Manchester United to convince him to join. However, Real Madrid want to keep him, and the current stance is that he stays. If he stays, he could look at a new deal, which is really, this report is kind of, I think, then as you were a couple of weeks ago. If you recall when the reports first came out that we were, looking at Tchouameni as a possible option, the conclusion at the time wasn't it? But Real Madrid wanted to stay, and, Real Madrid wanted to stay, and he's actually going to sign a new deal. So it kind of felt a bit of a non-starter. Then when the fight with Valverde happened the other day, it kind of moved things back up again a bit, because the suggestion was, wow, maybe one of them will have to go. And if they go, who knows what could happen there? So I think this is one to watch. I think it still goes in the, unlikely pile as of right now. And actually nothing's really changed. Nothing's really moved because of that fight or what have you. But there is the thing with Real Madrid is there's just a lot to watch this summer. They are going to be busy. Of course, they didn't win the Liga. Their president, Perez, has done an interview where he's just gone on a fucking tirade about everything, about people didn't want them in the Champions League final. And, you just think all of the above, But I think there's also an election coming up for him. And, he wants to get Jose back in. So there could be a massive shakeup at Madrid this summer. And there is a feeling that there could be at least one big name that goes, unless Jose tries to knit it all together, which he may do or he may not. And it'll be interesting to see how much Real Madrid back Jose over the players, because by all accounts, Xabi Alonso lost that war between him and the players. Would Jose be able to do that? He's certainly got a lot more credibility, but he's also got a very, very short temper, doesn't he? And he doesn't take a lot of shit. So one to watch, I think, Aurélien Tchouameni. But as far as another one to watch, Mateus Fernandes, this one doesn't go away as well very quickly. James Ducker from The Telegraph saying that Bruno is a keen admirer of him, which we had heard previously. I think that one is much more likely. And interesting that it was saying this morning that if, West Ham United do go down, then maybe there will be a bit of a cut price. I don't know if there will, because I feel like there might be the biggest cash earner for them this summer. But we don't know what things are baked into contracts. We sometimes find about these things later on, don't we? So you never know. That is certainly one that feels more likely, certainly, than Chouameni. So there you go. Am I caught up with the super chats? I read that one. Did I read that one? I did read that one. And there you go. Lazar says, Sunderland was our worst game. Paul and Arsenal were our best. If we play closer to our best next season, Carrick will be fine. Why? And this is what's interesting with that, Lazar, is I think Sunderland, there have been some bad ones. Sunderland was bad. Leeds was bad. Newcastle was bad. I think West Ham wasn't great as well. The Liverpool game was weird. I wouldn't say it was our best, particularly in the second half. Second half, we weren't great. We let that game slip through our fingers to an extent, and I think it actually flattered Liverpool a little bit, because for a lot of the game they just weren't there. They really weren't there, and we made that so difficult for ourselves. I think your two best performances that we've had, I would say, Arsenal and City, those first two, and then there was which was the other one? I forget. There was a recent one that I thought actually was much better than people gave it credit for. I think it was the Aston Villa one. That was it. It was the Aston Villa one. I remember after that Newcastle game, after we lost that, and there was this whole, United got to bounce back. We're going to do, we got to bounce back. And 3-1 against Aston Villa at Old Trafford. And that was like a proper, this is, we got this is to get Champions League. They're the rivals. And 3-1 did it, all of the big hitters scored. Casemiro, Šeško, Cunha. I thought that was a good performance as well too. But yeah, it would, like I said, it was the thing is that Sunderland one in particular. It was really, really bad. But I also think there was an overreaction to it, just because the way the reaction came out after the game, you would have thought we'd just blown Champions League and we were in the final of, or we were in the final of a major cup competition, which wasn't the case. It was like, well, it's the end of the season, isn't it? The end of the season. We also, our midfield, without Casemiro, we've been saying it all season, haven't we? Take out Casemiro out of that midfield, what happens? We lose or we don't win. We've seen it. So I think that was an indication of just actually how much work there is to do this summer. Get players in, recruit properly, and see where we can go from there. So there you go, folks. Be sure to smash a like on the like button. Be sure to subscribe. If any other breaking news happens today, of course, we shall be on it. Flexing KG show was up last night, so if you haven't checked that out, be sure to check that out too. I'll be back tomorrow morning, and of course it's Friday, so we'll be back with Trinity. And then of course it is match day. When do we play? Sunday at 12:30. 12:30 on a Sunday. That is a bit of an odd one, isn't it? Usually those Sunday, what time are those Sunday kickoffs usually? They're like, 2 o'clock, and then like 3:30, 4 o'clock, 4:30, something like that. 12:30 on a Sunday seems unusually early. Is that going to be like a TNT game? Is that why? Have they just moved it from a Saturday to a Sunday, perhaps? Maybe. We shall see. But anyway, guys, enjoy your Thursday, enjoy your week, and I'll be back very soon. We're out of here. Peace.